Blade Runner special effects, one of the last fully analog special effects movies created. A lot of really fun stuff that Nick and I had never even seen in one of my favorite films. We're going to have a fun time here.
Welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. Today we're going to talk about the special effects. If you guys might have seen some of our visual effects videos out there where we covered Wonder Woman 1984 to Parasite and any other upcoming movie like Godzilla versus Kong. So now we're just going to talk about a lot of special effects because there's really no visual. There's no visual effects. It's all special effects, which is awesome because I've never done special effects like this before, and John hasn't. So it's been just a great, just like a wow, all the time and effort taken into just a handful of shots. It's incredible, amazing job by these artists. Fantastic work. The matte painters to everything. We're going to dive into it here, but John, it wasn't incredible.
Yeah, so it's one of my all-time favorite movies, and the special effects hold up very well. But one of the things is I'd recently in the last year bought a Blade Runner Blu-ray that had like all four or five prints that are out there in the world. You know, the theatrical directors.
You mean all 50
these work prints? Yeah, all these. And there was like a whole disc just full of special features, and they had probably like, was it like a 30-minute thing on special effects? And it was really cool seeing all the miniatures and some of the fun stuff they were talking about. Was like, yeah, no one there at the time was really specialized in doing this. This is not much after 1977 Star Wars, and aside from Industrial Light and Magic, you didn't have long-term special effects studios. And one of the cool things about this for me is you didn't go to school for this at the time. You know, you didn't get schools until way. So it's like you just somehow found yourself in this world and you were taught the trade. It's almost like, you know, a mentorship type thing. And I think that's a really cool way to learn. And like, yeah, we just figured out as we go. And sometimes we'd rewind the film a number of times. We'd open it up to take it out and it would be shredded to pieces because it didn't rewind correctly. It's just like, crazy. Well, now we got to start. But yeah, really fun stuff. Yeah.
Yes. And if you guys like Blade Runner, we did an awesome podcast on it on our podcast on Spotify and Apple. We dive into all the cool stuff with story and film, much more than just the special effects. We do touch on it a little bit, just how beautiful the film was and the whole film noir like aspect with the lighting and stuff like that.
But we knew we were doing a special effects one, so we saved this stuff. I'm like, I can't wait to dig in, you know.
Yeah. So, but now we're digging in, and one of the crazy things is like the motion control cameras. Like I was like listening to them talk about how many passes they had to do like for the fires and the lights, and it's just insane, and it would take like a full day to program one basic movement.
What did they say? It's like an Etch-a-Sketch they compared it to. It's like, oh my gosh. But it's neat because if you guys aren't familiar with the motion control camera, it's a rig that you put a camera on that can repeat the exact same movement over and over as many times as you need. And it's used in a lot of movies. You wouldn't think, like the movie Click, that Adam Sandler comedy, they did some motion control shots in that movie even. So it's not something that's just special effects movie based. But in this one, so if you guys are familiar with CG computer based rendering, you have a thing called render passes where you render one where you just have the lights, the specular highlights, and then you can render out as just the diffuse and all these different passes, and you combine them together and you can mix them all together. What they were talking about, which Nick was touching on, is they set it up to where they would do their passes with real world lights. Okay, let's get the whole thing lit very well. Let's do another pass with it just with the lights twinkling. And then they combine that all, not in computers, they would do that in camera on film, which is
crazy,
really scary. Yeah, but that's how they controlled exactly the look they wanted to get, which is really, really cool. It's just, it was such a fun thing to watch. And there was hours of special feature stuff, but this was the biggest one for special effects, I think.
And some of the crazy stuff was that their small budget.
They say they had a lot of shots. I think they said it was like $2 million or something.
It was just crazy, like how small the budget was for this movie.
One of the guys that was in there a lot is Trumbull is his last name. He's the Trumbull cloud tank. So if you guys watch like Close Encounters or Raiders of the Lost Ark, they have these really cool
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters. All these movies we love that you guys have probably seen as well. They did these clouds a really special way, and it's called the Trumbull cloud tank. And so he's a famous special effects artist, and so he's talked about a lot in this as well, like how they went about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. It was really cool. And then did you see like the whole car scene when they had to set it up where they're like they're flying and then the rain and then they have layers of it, and then it's just What the heck? That's
It's so much fun. So much fun. If you guys haven't, I'll maybe down in the description we'll put the specific Blu-ray set that I bought. I'm sure they have these special features in other ones as well, but at least if you do buy that, you'll be getting all this stuff. It's cool. The booklet has like original storyboards and really, really fun stuff. But we're gonna
something that's not part of the special effects, but I thought was interesting was how talented of an artist Ridley Scott was.
Yeah.
When it comes to actual when he has the visuals in mind, he would draw it out, which really helped the whole crew and everything with a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, you hear stories about like Ridley Scott and especially James Cameron, how they're good enough artists that they can draw this stuff out, and instead of just having to try and convey it to a storyboard artist, like you would hear Peter Jackson would kind of do little doodles, but then he'd hand it off to the storyboard. They could actually kind of do the stuff to a pretty good extent and give them a better idea on what they actually want to look like.
And the artwork was incredible. The stuff they were showing, like the whole eye shot and everything like that. And it was like, it just looks so good. And then the miniatures, John, the miniatures were off the charts. Like, they were amazing.
Yes. And it's really cool to hear how they did them. So did you remember what they made the stuff out of?
Well, I mean,
there's a number of different shots, but some
just
really
leftover
cool,
parts. No, I'm just kidding.
So in one of the shots, they literally showed an outline. Yeah, we took a Millennium Falcon toy and stuck it in here and spray painted it, and so that was part of the buildings and whatever they could find.
I think they even said a kitchen sink too wasn't back there.
But it was really cool because they were talking about, the very first scene of Los Angeles when you go in there, that was just. I think it was pieces of brass that were paper, like just, millimeters or centimeters thick. And so it's 2D. It's like what you would consider a card today. It's just a piece of paper suspended in space. And the camera, since things are further away, when you move the camera, things seem to be moving at different speeds or different depths. And so like that opening shot with all it was just thousands of different sections
nice
on brass.
Parallax movement, you know what I mean? Like
the
whole
it's beautiful. It's
just incredible. And it was the angles they have to get. Some of the buildings are so tall they had to tilt the whole set sideways.
Really cool stuff. And you maybe would know how they went about doing the miniatures and the shots and the perspective and stuff, but that they actually had to do those things to make it work is just fun extra information that you wouldn't get otherwise. And
then the cars are flying around too, which is an added layer, and then the lights on top of the cars.
And they were saying the lights without all those crazy lens flares looked really bad, and they're just like, hey, what can we do with the lens flare? And they just pull all kinds of lens flare and just made it look that beautiful signature style. So a couple other really fun things about the miniatures, that huge pyramid where Tyrell Corporation's at, that was made out of plexiglass. It was 8 feet at the base and 2 feet at the top where it like kind of tapered in. And it was plexiglass, clear plexiglass. And they painted the texture on the top of it. And so they didn't have to have individual LED lights or LCD or whatever it is. They would chip away the paint where they wanted lights. And so they had like a 10,000 watt light on the inside of there. So every window was lit by the same light source on the inside of that plexiglass. And just, it looked so good.
It looks so good. It was on fire. Like,
so you want to tell that story? That's a fun
Go for
story.
it. It's so good.
So they're like, we could repurpose this and flip it upside down and use it for other stuff. Well, they flipped it upside down. They didn't think about this is not ventilating the heat out of it very well. And they actually showed the take in the middle of shooting. It caught on fire and melted. They're like, well, that amazing miniature, that was the end of it.
It was towards the end of it, so they it was okay.
They got everything they needed.
So it was okay.
Man, these shots look so good, and they didn't have to fiddle with this for months and years after it was shot. Like that was all in camera. The way it looked is the way they captured it, and how cool! Just how cool.
It's all about the setup, right?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't even want to think about that. I would be second guessing myself like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's the opposite of what we do now. And visual effects is you do set up things and put a lot of thought in, but you're working on making everything work after the fact. Whereas here, they did all their thought up front and then, made it work in camera.
Yeah. And then the matte paintings, John. A whole other level. And then something I didn't know too was the color, right? Because it's painted on glass. When you hit light behind it, the colors are different, right? Because it's like, obviously, this guy would be painting at that. That's like a brain.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
I had never thought about that they were saying, so traditional matte paintings, they do them digitally now, but traditional matte paintings, they were painted on huge panes of glass and they would chip it away where they wanted whatever live action was supposed to be projected in that space. And so you'd have these huge paintings with little sections where you project the real footage. But they were saying, like, yeah, when you hit stuff with light from behind, though, it changes the colors on the matte painting. And so he had to almost just be able to offset that in his head, paint it to where it looks assy. But then when you actually film it with the light hitting it, it looks really good. It's just like stuff we don't even have to worry about. Like, that sounds ridiculous to us now, but it's like there is a beautiful style to those hand painted matte paintings though, that you don't get now as much from the digital stuff. Yeah, that's
so true. Like, the quality is just, it's incredible. And it's cool too, like the effects they would use, like with you don't have any straight hard edges with the buildings and stuff. You want it crooked and stuff so it feels more real, and the way it like blends back into the background and stuff like that. The little techniques they were talking about was just like, wow. And then like for those crazy scenes too, when Harrison Ford's hanging off the building and all that stuff, and you have to paint like force perspective stuff. I'm happy all the cameras were locked off for those shots.
And Ridley Scott said, he's like, I use locked off cameras for these shots, not moving, so they can paint these. But he even credited, he's like, the matte painters are what makes these shots really work. I mean, obviously they have to have the live action as a base to know what they have to blend into. So there's still obviously important planning, but those matte painters, and what exactly we were saying, I've heard this on other making ofs for matte paints, thing like that, is you don't want it to be super detailed, perfect, because it doesn't come off right. So they use these broad strokes that are kind of abstract if you look at it. Of course, the famous example is the last shot in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they show, the Ark of the Covenant being stowed in this huge factory. And if you look at it really, really close, there's these non-detailed things, but your mind just oddly enough just fills in those gaps, which is weird. Yeah,
totally.
But this has been one of my favorites so far.
And then that last matte painting scene that they showed, it was the one where they're in the building with the light. Like there's like the sun coming in with the pyramid and all the issues and stuff they had to go through, because like they're like, we never have the beam of light being shot from the back of a matte painting. It's always going the other way. And so like all the things they had to do, it was just incredible.
I think the funnest thing about this is what I want to shoot stuff like that. There's one class that I taught for a number of years. It was called Plates and Emblems, and you would do things in the traditional way, and it was really, really fun. And certain things you could get done way faster than you could doing it computer based. But the concerns they had, what if it doesn't come out right? We have to start all over. I would never want to do it this way, but I think more than anything, the creative problem solving they had to do to figure out how they were going to do these things. It's just fascinating. It's like, hey, in your mind, based on your past experiences, this is the theory on how I think this would work. And sometimes it's just a hunch, and they go out and they do tests, usually for a very short amount, a little amount of money, and then they just figure it out and make it work. And to me, you still have this in the visual effects industry today, but not to, I think, this degree where they were just figuring out as they went. This is just very fascinating to hear these stories from these veterans.
Amazing job. That's why it's one of the best visuals out there. I mean, we can go into other stuff like the lighting they did for the noir stuff, but we just wanted to focus on the special effects and amazing.
And it's interesting because typically when you shoot noir type films, so noir, if you guys aren't familiar, film noir was way back when, black and white. There wasn't much money to be made for movies back then, and noir is like black and white. And the reason it's so dark is they didn't have money for big budget lighting and stuff. And so you had this very moody, darkly lit. Well, it's because that's all they had. But the problem is usually when you do that, it's very hard for special effects because you have a lot of very grainy footage. You have to use very sensitive film stock. And the more sensitive, if you shoot in a dark room, you have to shoot with film that's very sensitive to light. And the more sensitive it is, the more noise you get, that film grain. And that can make it very difficult to match elements in there. So if you have a matte painting doesn't have that film grain, and that makes it not look right. So they were talking about how they had to combat all this stuff. And it was just very fascinating. And obviously sometimes when you shoot stuff like noir style, you can get away with more, but at the same time, that can cause you issues as well. It just depends. Yeah. And obviously we have to credit Sid Mead a huge amount for all the designs and things like that. I mean, his concept art was obviously a major part in this.
It was brought to life by the special effects artists. Good job, guys.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I mean, but obviously you look at Alien and then you look at this movie, there is a lot of similarities as far as the beat down and worn down look. And so that's a Ridley Scott thing. So, I mean, it definitely There's a lot of people came together. They kind of had shared visions on how they viewed things, but they all pitched in their specialties, and it came out as a very special movie. One interesting thing about the current version, if you guys are watching this on Netflix, or the Blu-ray version that I was watching, is the final cut. And this has some restoration done to it, and some special effects have actually been redone and revamped. And so I remember the first time I saw this on Laserdisc, back when I was in college. I had rented this at a Laserdisc store. And I thought it looked kind of lower budget, which it is, compared to like something like Star Wars. But when I saw this on Blu-ray just a couple nights ago, I was like, man, this looks pristine and clean. But then I keep having to remember this is because they remastered it or they restored it. And so it's like, all right, makes sense that it looks really clean because they've done the cleanup, but they haven't changed much.
Yeah.
They did color grade things in certain shots significantly or add in matte paintings, but for the most part, I think they try to stay pretty close to the original vibe of things. It's not like Greedo doesn't, haunt, it's nothing like that. It was just more like, okay, we have the budget to make things. Yeah. But that's what George Lucas said too. I can't even say that.
Aids with the storytelling.
Yeah.
I don't know if this story would have been as strong if it didn't have the visuals with it.
No, I mean,
it's tough because you need the visuals. You need the blimp.
You have to.
You need the blimp flying around. You need the ads to make it feel real, and just you need all that, and it just complemented the story.
Yes.
In the best way possible.
And that's a good point that you bring up too, because another video, I didn't watch it all the way through, in the special features, was they were talking about just coming up with the ads and what they look like. And you think that's not that big of a deal, but those ads are very iconic these days, that they have in this movie. And, a game that came out that everybody was hoping was going to be like Blade Runner was Cyberpunk 2077. And they did these ads and they took them in a more, satire direction, and people hated them because it didn't fit the world. It didn't fit what they were going for. And so you think that ads would be an easy thing, but no, the design goes into those things. And then if they don't fit the world, it kind of discredits everything else you're trying to do. And so the ads were a huge part of it. Like, I can't even think of them all, but that first shot where, the Coke stuff, and when she has all those different things, all those things just fit in there perfectly, and it adds to that world. And the world building is one of the wonderful things about this. And then, of course, not a special effect, but something that nails down the mood is, of course, all the heavy rain. And people ask, like, why does it rain so much? And really, Scotty's a pretty opinionated guy. He's like, is it because I wanted it to? Damn it! I was like, I forgot. He
just like Steven Spielberg, right? He's like, I just wanted to rain with the T-Rex. It's like, even though it's a mechanical thing, it's gonna break down. Who cares?
But you know what? In both of those, the rain adds so much. Yes. If you did not have the rain in Blade Runner, that's another thing. When I mentioned that Blade Runner look that everybody always tries to do, the rain is a big part of that.
And it's so funny because it's LA, so something must have happened. We went a different route with 2019 went a different route for sure. It's just like, wait, we're in a dry desert here, and over there they're like in the tropical rainforest where it rains 24/7.
But one of the really cool things in one of the other videos is they have Tony Scott, Ridley Scott's brother, who made Top Gun, and he's not with us anymore. But he had talked about it. He goes, yeah, in my top 5 movies of all time, my number 1 favorite movie is Blade Runner. Not because it's my brother's movie, but he's like, I look at the movie and he's like, the reason it's raining so much in there is because where we grew up, it rained all the time. He's like, so I could see Ridley Scott's life in here. I could see my life in it. He's like, I could see all these influences in our lives reflected into this movie. And that's cool when someone makes something that they're really proud of, and you look at it and you can see their influences, that's a kind of a really neat thing. So it's that rain, the wet look is something that's definitely a huge part of that movie, as much as the smoke and everything else.
It is.
All right, you guys, I'm sure you can tell that we're really excited and enthusiastic about doing this one. Hopefully, if you have not seen Blade Runner, do yourself a favor, give it a watch. It is a slower movie. It's a classic. It has a lot of major influence in all the different mediums that we've gotten of entertainment since then. So definitely check it out. If you have some other making ofs or things like that, maybe that I haven't seen on the set that we have, or ones that we don't know about at all, please drop them down in the description. We'd love to see those, or in the comments. We'd love to see those. Thank you very much for watching. Check out our podcast on the subject. Check out our movie review for Taylor, who had hardly ever seen it before. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next AsArt. Rubber face.